What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. Tonight, we are here for another episode of Let's Talk Dynasty, and more specifically, we are here for part 2 of the 7 storylines that you should be keeping an eye on coming out of OTAs. And first things first, I see we got some people in the chat. I see we got Dylan in here. Says he always loves the content. I also see that we got a super chat in the building before we even started. So let me get my co-host in the building. We can start talking about the super chat. And then I got an announcement for you guys before we get into tonight's episode. But let's get him in the building. MFGDs, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm ready to rock and roll as usual. Let's do this thing.
Let's do it, man. So Dylan's in here, and he hit us with a super chat. He says this is a 12-team super flex startup. He said the league faded quarterback in the startup. So his first 4 picks were Kyler, Lamar, Daniels, Purdy. Then he said he made 4 trades. He sold a 7, 8, and 9 round picks for 10, 13, 19, 3 25 firsts, and a 26 second. He said, is this a perfect start? And I think the first thing that I want to say is if you're a fading quarterback, or if your league is fading quarterback in a super flex startup, and you are the guy that is going to gobble up all of that value, you are going to be a big winner long term, because you are going to be able to make a lot of money in the trade room when people start realizing, hey, I need a goddamn quarterback, and you're sitting there with Lamar, Kyler, Daniels, Purdy. I like the start. I don't mind trading back and getting some extra draft capital. It's 7, 8, 9. That's kind of a lot of stuff to give up, but you get 3 firsts. It seems like you can probably make a pretty young roster over the next 2 years using this type of draft capital. What do you think, War?
I think it's a great start, to be honest. Like you said, starting off with amazing quarterbacks in the league. I don't know why they will fade quarterback in a super flex. That's kind of insane to me. That in of itself like opens so many avenues for you to be able to not only dominate with the quarterbacks you have on your roster, but also move those quarterbacks for even more draft capital. So, yeah, I think You're off to a pretty damn good start.
Absolutely, man. And we got Gerard Mayon here. He says LFG. So look, man, first and foremost, I said I had an announcement. If you guys are in the comments, you see that I pinned it down to the thing. Shout out to every single person who has helped us pass 2,000 subscribers. We've recently passed 2,000 subscribers. When I went to bed last night, we were at 1,999. When I looked at it today, I want to say that we were sitting at like 2030, 2035, something like that. So the reality is we've seen over 150 new subscribers come to the channel over the last 48 hours. The majority of that is because of the reason we dropped a video on this channel that was 15 experts helping me with the fantasy football team. Video's doing incredible. It's probably going to be the first video on this channel that surpasses 10,000 views. So thank you to everybody who's watched it. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. If you're new here, we're happy to have you. And in honor of having that milestone passed, that milestone checked off, I want to do a little bit of a giveaway tonight. So let me show you what I'm giving away. And in order to be eligible for this giveaway, if you want to win what I'm about to show you, you have to comment in the comment section of today's video, not in the live chat. If you're in the live chat, it'll count too, I guess. But you also got to do it in the comment section of this video. Hashtag road to 3,000. Because that is the next goal. So if you want to be eligible for the giveaway, hashtag road to 3,000. I'm giving away 2 of these. And I guess I could have just I guess I could have just stood up, but we're giving away 2 of the League FFB's t-shirts, our merch. It's not actually out yet, so you will be one of only a few people to get a t-shirt like this. I have them in size large. That is men's sizes. So if you want to get a large League FFB t-shirt, I can get it sent your way. You have to comment road to 3,000 in today's video, and I'll pick a couple winners out of that road to 3,000. So thank you again to everybody. Appreciate each and every one of you guys. You guys are the lifeblood of the community that we are building here, and we appreciate you guys so much. So just wanted to get that out of the way before we started today's show. Now, War, we are here for storylines for the OTAs. We've done a part 1 to this before. some of the stuff that we talked about on that episode was Justin Jefferson's contract. Was it going to be an issue? Well, that solved itself. Some of the other stuff we've talked about was just, there's just been a lot that we've talked about, but there's still more. So let's hop into today's video. Let's hop into the storylines. And the first one that I want to talk about, and a headline that caught my eye, is the one that was on the thumbnail. That is that the Athletics' Dan Duggan is reporting an anonymous offensive assistant coach said that the Giants wide receiver Malik Nabers could be like Odell Beckham Jr. in 2024. We talked about this wide receiver class. We talked about how good it's been, or how good we project it to be. Have they found themselves a new OBJ? We've seen the highlights coming out of OTAs. What do you think, man? Do you think that Malik Nabers has the chance to be the best rookie wide receiver since Odell?
I mean, let's start with the fact that I think Odell Beckham Jr. is one of the most overrated wide receivers in history. I imagine that we're not talking about the most recent version of Odell Beckham. We're talking about the Odell Beckham that was famous off of making one catch. I mean, it'll be great. I think it's a very lazy comparison, though, for the fact that New York Giants, Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, I say let Malik go out there and be Malik. Let him be his own guy. I think Malik has a better chance to be better than Odell Beckham Jr. Like, Odell Beckham's not on, like, this pantheon of great wide receivers in NFL history. Like, come on now. But if he's going to start off like Odell Beckham Jr., then that's a hell of a start. But the hope should be that he ends up better than Odell Beckham Jr.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think it sounds crazy because you think of the career that Odell Beckham Jr. has had, but I want to look at specifically 2014. 2014, Odell's rookie year, 130 targets, 91 receptions, 1,300 receiving yards, and 12 touchdowns. He was averaging almost 25 fantasy points per game as a rookie. That was number one in the NFL. It was the most fantasy points from any wide receiver. If Malik Nabers goes out and he gives you Odell Beckham numbers, we're talking about a player who in redraft leagues, in your best ball leagues, even in your dynasty leagues, his value is going to skyrocket. People are going to be talking about him as potentially the dynasty wide receiver one if he goes out and does that with Daniel Jones under center. Is that going to be an overreaction by the community, or if he does that, is that earned?
Daniel Jones is no Eli Manning. I mean, I just want to put that out there. That's the other part of this that has to come to pass in order for him to become Odell Beckham Jr. Daniel Jones will have to be better than he's ever been. So, I mean, no, Malik Nabers is not going to put up those numbers in his rookie season. I like Nabers. I think Nabers is going to be, like, awesome. But, yeah, that's not going to happen. I think it's just regular offseason coach speak, fluff, praise of a player. Like, come on. No, he's not putting up those numbers.
What do you make of it, of the coach being anonymous? What do you take out of that?
That he's anonymous?
Yeah.
That even he doesn't believe the shit that he's saying. That's what I take from it, man.
Fair enough. Yeah, I thought that was funny because if you're gonna go out there and you're gonna make a statement like that, at least I want to know what coach is saying this about me. Like, I'm not trying to have you be anonymous, man. What are we scared of? Say it with your chest. And I just think, man, you look at the wide receiver rankings right now. As a rookie, Malik Nabers, before playing a single snap, he's wide receiver 9. He is right behind A.J. Brown, right behind Garrett Wilson, right behind Puka Nacua. That is the tier of wide receiver that we have him in, over on Keep Trade Cut, at least. And it just feels like the expectations are very, very high for a wide receiver that has some question marks at the quarterback position, potentially has some question marks about the offense as a whole. Didn't look great last year. I know that they didn't really have any quarterback play as well, but I don't know, man. I think Daniel Jones, he might be overvalued. I mean, Malik Nabers, I think he might be overvalued in the community, but I fully believe in the player. Like, I think the player is going to be very, very good for us, but I think wide receiver 9 to start off the bat, it feels a little bit hefty.
It's very hefty. I wouldn't put that on anybody, man. And even if he did magically do it, I mean, we got to talk about him sustaining that as well. That's why I don't have to see it a little bit more when, Odell Beckham's rookie season. He put up big numbers, right? Rookie season.
Yep.
Sometimes you have that big rookie season and it happens one time, you know?
Fair enough.
Uh,
I mean, in all fairness, I do think you're being a little bit negative about Odell Beckham because you look at the years that he put together afterwards. It was wide receiver 3 from points per game as a sophomore. His third year was wide receiver 6 in fantasy points per game. Then he had the year where he only played 4 games, but then the year after that, wide receiver 7. So he gave us 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5 wide receiver 1 seasons back to back to back. Like, I think you're being a little bit negative about OBJ.
it's not necessarily that I think his entire career is trash. It's the fact that when you still hear media talk about Odell Beckham Jr., like, for example, he was signed by the Dolphins this offseason. They were acting like they signed another Tyreek Hill. You know what I mean? Like, Odell Beckham's not that guy anymore. And I just think this anonymous coach that made this claim, I think it's also lazy because he's comparing him to another former New York Giant. You could almost say that it might be pandering a little bit. Like, that's what I'm saying. So when I say he's the most overrated in history, that might be a little extreme in history part, but he's definitely overrated. Like, today, he's overrated. Like, he's not that guy anymore.
Fair enough. All right, man. Well, let's move on to the next story. This is a story for all of my Vikings fans out there. This is maybe a story that I snuck in there just because I wanted to talk about my guy. But look, new quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, J.J. McCarthy. The Athletic's Alec Lewis is reporting that the Vikings coaches want to take it slow with quarterback J.J. McCarthy in 2024, potentially meaning that Sam Darnold could be the starting quarterback for a majority of the season, or at least up until the bye. That is about week 10, if I'm remembering correctly off the top of my head. Do you think this is the right decision? Do you think it is the smart play for the Vikings to take it slow with J.J. McCarthy?
Yeah, and not only should they take it slow with JJ McCarthy, I also think that, and people called me crazy when I was talking about it earlier this offseason, I also think that they really do like Sam Darnold. I mean, that's everything I've heard, that they like Sam Darnold. If you listen to the way the coaches talk about him, it seems like it's somebody they like and respect. And if Sam Darnold is decent, they don't have to rush JJ McCarthy. JJ McCarthy gets to sit back and learn from Sam Darnold, and I don't think it's a bad decision. Now, if Sam Darnold shits the bed, then you throw JJ in there. But right now, there doesn't seem to be an urgent need for them to put JJ McCarthy on the field.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I've been on record where I've said that I feel like it is best for the Vikings this year to play your cards right, play it slow. And do not hear what I am not saying. I am not saying that JJ McCarthy is going to be what this player is that I'm going to talk about. But this situation, you bring in a veteran quarterback, you play him slowly. It kind of feels a little bit um, like the Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love. You let him sit, you let him learn. Obviously, not as long. Maybe even the Alex Smith, Pat Mahomes. You let him sit for a year, you let him learn. Like, it seems to me, and maybe I am wrong when I say this, when you let the young quarterback who maybe has the physical tools, but he still needs to kind of tighten some things up to play at the professional level, which is what Jordan Love is and was, and it is what Patrick Mahomes was when he was a rookie. It seems like you need to let those guys kind of get their feet wet at the NFL level. And that does translate to, at least from what we've seen, into some potential NFL success. And I see we got Victorious in here. He also says Tyrod and Herbert. Now that was ended very prematurely because of the medical thing that happened with Tyrod Taylor,
Yeah.
but it does feel like this is kind of the smart decision and the right path that the Vikings should take with JJ McCarthy. And if that happens, do you think that the Vikings taking 10 games or 9 games, 8 games, whatever it may be, with Sam Darnold under center, with the beginning schedule or beginning of the season schedule being so tough for the Minnesota Vikings, do you think this could be a potential? Okay, we might be a bad team this year, but we are playing a chess game to where we are trying to be a really good football team a year from now.
Yeah, I think you guys are playing a long game. I don't think there's an urgency for you guys to go out there and try to win this season. I think it's going to be a prioritization of the young quarterback developing. And if you end up with two quarterbacks that are good, then it's really going to be looking good for the Vikings because now you get to go into the next offseason with that trade piece in Sam Darnold, and you're bringing along J.J. McCarthy. So, yeah, I think the long game is actually the right move for the Vikings.
Yeah, I don't mind it. Like I said, I'm on record saying that I would like to see. I mean, I wouldn't love to see it, but I think the smart decision and the decision that I would support the most is seeing Sam Darnold go out there week one as the starting quarterback. I think that's the decision that I think is the best. But obviously, if JJ McCarthy is ready, and if you feel like JJ McCarthy is ready, which from the sounds of this article, of it being a slower process than wanting to take it slow, seems like it may not be this. But if he's ready, I mean, I'm all support. Go get your franchise quarterback on the field, but let's make sure he's ready first. Let's kind of coddle and baby him just a tiny bit because I think we don't want to throw him out to the wolves too soon and start messing with the kid's confidence because I think that's kind of what happened to Zach Wilson when you put him in New York. I think that's what happened with Darnold when you threw him in New York. I just am pointing to the New York Jets. Maybe that's just a
Common
bad
denominator.
example, but I think when you throw the quarterback in early and they're maybe not ready, it can be pretty detrimental to their development. So I agree. Take it a little bit slow. And we do have Victorious says, we're finishing third or fourth in our division this year. No reason to put an unready QB on the
You
field.
guys are finishing fourth.
You think fourth?
Yeah.
It's between you and I. Chicago
Bears,
and Minnesota.
Look, the Vikings aren't having a better record than the Bears. Come
We'll see. We'll see, man.
on.
But let's move on to the next piece here. The one that I saw somebody say earlier, they were excited to hear us talk about him. Adonai Mitchell. I've been on record multiple times this offseason pumping up this kid. The Athletics' James Boyd is reporting that wide receiver Adonai Mitchell is continuing to flash his potential during Colts OTAs. He's making acrobatic catches. He is becoming one of the primary deep ball targets for Anthony Richardson. Look, dude, it seems like the kid is going to be a pretty big piece in this offense. And what kind of potential do we see out of Adonai Mitchell? Because when you look at where he's being valued right now in the Dynasty Fantasy Football community, if you were to go against Keep Trade Cuts rankings right now, this is a guy who is currently being valued as let me see if I can find him real quickly. We got to go to the second page. This tells you how low we're valuing him right now. He is a guy that, hell, do I got to search him up? Wide receiver 43. Wide receiver 43. So it's the 105th player. He is on the third page of Keep Trade Cut right now. So they have 104 players ahead of Adonai Mitchell. Are we making a mistake right now?
Yeah, probably. And I think the Chiefs made a mistake. I think they're going to rue the day that they didn't take Adonai Mitchell. I mean, there's a couple teams that probably should have took Adonai Mitchell, but they didn't. I think a lot of it has to do with the wide receiver room for the Colts. You got Pittman, you got Downs there. So, I mean, I think that's what people are a little bit overreacting to. But I could tell you now that Pittman is the only guy that's secured in his spot. Downs can be taken over, and Adonai could be the wide receiver 2 for that team. And he has the potential to be the wide receiver 1 for that team. So, yeah, I'm not surprised that he's flashing at all.
You think he has the potential to surpass Michael Pittman Jr. in this offense?
Yeah, because I think Michael Pittman, I think he's a generic wide receiver 1. I mean he's not a needle mover to me. He's like a good wide receiver 1. I mean, he's not a guy that you're gonna put, way up there at the top. So yeah, I think there's a space and opportunity for Adonai Mitchell to be the most talented receiver and become the wide receiver one for that team.
Yeah, I saw we got a couple comments in here. Anthony says he felt like he was at EDC for a second. I felt like we had to put a little a little air horn there with the take of him saying he could surpass Michael Pittman, because Michael Pittman's a damn good wide receiver. And there's some people in here saying, do you think that Michael Pittman Jr. and Adonai Mitchell can both be fantasy options with Anthony Richardson? Because we haven't seen him support two fantasy relevant wide receivers. I mean, we haven't even seen Anthony Richardson much at all up to this point.
Right.
If that is the case, and if he can only support one, I think this is probably a proper evaluation of Adonai Mitchell, because there's just not going to be enough passing pie. But the way that we're drafting Anthony Richardson right now, it tells us that we think he's the real deal. And I don't know, man. I agree. I think Adonai Mitchell, he is a hell of a talent, and I agree with you to the point where you say there's going to be some teams that passed on him in the NFL draft that are going to look back at this and be like, damn, we fucked up. Because you have the Buffalo Bills who took Keon Coleman, and again, I am just a guy that watches all 22 tape at home sitting at my desk. I'm not an NFL scout, but when I watched Adonai Mitchell and when I watched Keon Coleman, Adonai Mitchell was the better wide receiver to me. I felt like he would have been better in Buffalo with Josh Allen. I feel like he would have been a better wide receiver than Xavier Worthy in Kansas City. I feel like he was probably a top 4, top 5 wide receiver in this class from a talent standpoint. I think I had him as my wide receiver 5 pre-draft process. So, look, dude, I'm a fan of the kid. I hope that he can turn into something special, because if you put him in this AFC South where you have the Houston Texans who have geared up, they're trying to make a run at the championship, and you talk about all of the weapons that they have there in Houston, and now you have Anthony Richardson with Adonai Mitchell, Michael Pittman Jr., Jonathan Taylor, Josh Downs, all of these weapons that he has. We're looking at it could be the Texans and the Colts, and not even to account for the fact that the Jaguars have been a decent football team over the last couple of years. They just added Brian Thomas Jr. there as well. Like, this could be a tough division, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, the Colts, I feel like they got a long way to go to compete with like teams like the Texans, but I feel like the Texans are the runaway team in that division. Everybody else is just playing for second. Adonai, yeah, man, right back to you. I think teams are going to regret not selecting that man because, like one of our commenters said, one of our viewers said, it's all based on attitude. I mean, attitude could be fixed with coaching. I think they said he has, I forget what they said is going on with him, that he had to like take medication, but that's just amongst the stupid things that teams use to push a player down in the rankings. So I think it's a big mistake, though.
I agree. And Grim Reaper says, does this mean that we should be going and selling Michael Pittman? I don't think we
No.
have to. I don't think we have to. And the reality is that Michael Pittman Jr. is probably not being properly evaluated by the market either, because you go look at where Pittman Jr. is in our rankings. Keep trade cuts wide receiver 18. Last year, from a fantasy points per game standpoint for Michael Pittman, and I know Adonai Mitchell wasn't on the football field, but neither was Anthony Richardson. He's the wide receiver 14. So we're valuing him lower than what he performed for our teams last year. He's always been a wide receiver 2 for our teams. He's going to continue to be a wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside. I don't think we need to go sell Pittman, but I'm very excited about the kid, Adonai Mitchell. I think he's going to be a dog, and happy to have a couple shares on my Dynasty rosters for sure. All right, man. Well, let's move on to actually, we have one more question. I want to pull this one in. Lad or Adonai? Where are we at?
I was thinking about that the entire time. And I think, honestly, my gut tells me Adonai probably would have been a better asset to Herbert.
I agree. For fantasy purposes, on the clock, I have to make a pick. I'm taking Ladd McConkey, just based on the expected volume that we should see. But I think if you had to tell me who's the more talented player of the two, Adonai Mitchell's the more talented guy on film. But for fantasy purposes, I'm taking Ladd McConkey in those rookie drafts over Adonai Mitchell. But yeah, let's go on to our next topic here. This one is going to be about everybody's favorite RB1 from last year's draft class, Bijan Robinson. He said that the Falcons offense will be more run first, like how they use Christian McCaffrey down there in San Francisco. So we know that this is coming from a Rams offense. It is going to be the new offense here in Atlanta. Arthur Smith out of town. What do you take away from this little news blurb of him being used like Christian McCaffrey?
It really didn't even take that news blurb for me to have big expectations for Bijan this season. I actually feel like he kind of fell short of what we expected last season. And I just felt like going into this season, this is going to be a big step forward. Him being used like McCaffrey, congratulations if you're a Bijan owner. I 100% buy the news blurb, but I already thought he was going to have a huge season this season, either way it goes.
Yeah, I agree, man. Like, I think if that is the case, obviously he's going to have to compete with the guy whose name he used in that statement, Christian McCaffrey. But Bijan has real the running back one potential. If that is the way that they're going to use him, if they're going to use him in the receiving game, the run game, he's going to be used on the goal line. This could get very, very good for fantasy football owners very quickly. Do you think?
Absolutely.
Do you think that there's going to be any reason to roster Tyler Algier outside of a handcuff option?
Just a handcuff. Security purposes only. He's there to carry Bijan's bags, check him into his hotel room, and bring him food service whenever he needs it. That's the only reason Tyler Algier will be there, and that's that. He's not going to get the opportunities he was getting last season. He's not getting that this season, and that already wasn't like a huge amount. So you can roster him if you got Bijan, but if you don't, I wouldn't put a priority on that.
Yeah, I mean, you just see that San Francisco. I know he's saying they're going to use it like the San Francisco system there. You see guys like Elijah Mitchell, just all the other running backs from San Francisco that have been valuable over the last couple of years because they find their way. But I guess the more you think about it, it's the reason why most of them become valuable is because of the injury to the running back ahead of them, right? Yeah. So he does feel more like a handcuff option, I guess. But Trenton says, LOL, Falcons ran the ball most time last year. They're going to run more, so sell the wide receivers. Do you think that there's a reason to sell the wide receivers at all with this news, or do you think this just is a new day, a new look Atlanta offense with Kirk Cousins under center, all of this? Like, are you worried at all?
I mean, it's pretty simple. They're going from Desmond Ridder to Kirk Cousins. Now they're not going to be able to load the box and things like that. They're going to have to pay more attention to the quarterback throwing the ball. So I think that's going to open up more lanes for Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, I agree. And you get guys like you said, I mean, in week 7, Bijan had 1 carry. It's insane to think that you had a running back like Bijan Robinson and you were using him like that. But I guess that's the reason why Arthur Smith is no longer coaching the Atlanta Falcons, correct?
Yep. So what does that tell you guys? Sell Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren.
So whichever one you are excited about in Pittsburgh, because it's going to be split. Some people are going to say they like Jaylen Warren. Some people are going to say they like Najee. Whichever one you're excited about, go get the other one instead, because it's not the one you think it is. That's the reality of the situation.
Yeah, then if Fields becomes the quarterback, then you have like a whole nother thing to worry about.
What do you mean become the quarterback? I thought he was returning kicks.
Oh, God. Justin Fields is not freaking returning kicks.
Kick returner now. He's not quarterback. He's a kick returner. So let's move on to our next topic because I know we have a little bit of a tighter time crunch today. But the next one that I want to talk about is the other running back from last year's class that got everybody super excited, Jahmyr Gibbs. The Lions running backs coach, Scotty Montgomery, has said that the team wants to use Jahmyr Gibbs more in the slot and down the field this year in the passing game. So this is a guy who was an RB1 last year as a rookie in a time split with David Montgomery, if they're using him in the slot, using him downfield as a receiving weapon, does Jahmyr Gibbs potentially have RB1, the RB1 type of ceiling?
Yeah, man, I'm really excited for Jahmyr Gibbs, even though he's a Detroit Lion. I'm super excited for Jahmyr Gibbs going into next season. I mean, when you really sit and think about it, you have Amon-Ra there, you have Sam Laporta there. I mean, there's room for Jahmyr to take on a prominent receiving role in addition to what he does on the ground. So, I mean, yeah, I buy it. Even though I said in the past I don't trust what the Lions are doing with their running backs, but I do believe that they'll use him more in the passing game. So, and that's going to be amazing. So,
I mean, look, we've got multiple reports this offseason, and I see we got Jay Lynn in here. What up, man? We have multiple reports up to this point of the Lions wanting to use Jahmyr Gibbs more. There's going to be more opportunities. There's going to be more receiving work. There's going to be more, et cetera, et cetera. This, to me, feels like we are about to get a player that is Alvin Kamara plus level of production for the next 4 to 5 years. And you look at what Alvin Kamara has been able to do as a fantasy football running back. And I know how good he has been. And I'm not saying this lightly. Alvin Kamara has been one of the greater fantasy football running back assets we've had over the last decade. He has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 RB1 finishes. One of them was RB, and then the one that he wasn't was RB13. So you have an asset that was so good at the fantasy football running back position, probably not even done yet. I mean, he still might have another year or two left in his tank. But when you look at the prime or the height of what Alvin Kamara was doing for our fantasy teams, you have seasons there where he was getting 80 receptions, 81, 81, 81, 83. That was 4 years in a row. He was seeing 80 plus receptions. Now you look at what Jahmyr Gibbs did last year, 50 receptions. There's a lot of meat left on that bone if you're Jahmyr Gibbs as a receiving threat. Now he had 11 touchdowns, but then you have years where Alvin Kamara had 13, 18, 20 touchdowns. I know David Montgomery is there, and I know he's going to continue to be an option in this offense. I don't think he's going away. They actually work really well as a 1-2 punch, but I don't think Jahmyr Gibbs is the type of running back that needs 20 carries or 25 carries to get going and to give you a hell of a fantasy football day. So I think there's a lot left. And let's not even speak about what happens if David Montgomery gets hurt, because if Montgomery gets hurt, just like we saw last year, then they start feeding Jahmyr Gibbs, and Jahmyr Gibbs is popping off RB1 weeks back to back to back.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. I think that this is very similar to that Saints offense where you had Mark Ingram and Kamara was still going out there destroying teams. So I think this is the same type of situation.
Yeah, man, I'm very excited about Jahmyr Gibbs, and right now the community is just as high on him as they are on anybody else. I mean, you look at where he is being ranked, 3rd overall. It's in that upper echelon type of tier with Bijan and Breece Hall. We also have Christian McCaffrey there at number 4, but the age is knocking him down in these dynasty ranks just a tiny bit. But how would you rank those 3 guys? Bijan, Gibbs, Breece. How would you rank that top tier?
I would rank it just the way you just put it. Bijan, Gibbs, Breece.
I would too. That's the way that I would do it.
Yeah.
And I know that there's going to be some people upset that we put Breece at number 3, but I think Gibbs' ceiling is elite. Like, I think, I don't know, man. He might be in contention. Like, if he goes out there, he puts another year like he did last year, and Bijan, given the new scheme and whatever I know we just talked about him potentially being used like Christian McCaffrey. If he underwhelms a tiny bit, we might be having a conversation as Jahmyr Gibbs RB1 overall.
I wouldn't be surprised, man.
So we'll see, man. But let's go on to our next one. And this is going to be a guy from last year's draft class, Jaxon Smith-Njigba. And ESPN's Brady Henderson is reporting that the feeling inside the Seahawks organization was that Jaxon Smith-Njigba has really improved in his practice habits. And this one I put here because that face you just made is kind of the face that I made when I saw it, because I was like, improving his practice habits, that doesn't sound necessarily like a positive report. That
Like a
kind of
backhand compliment.
yeah, it kind of sounds like it was almost like you weren't doing your job as a professional athlete last year in your preparation. And it just put a little thought in my mind of, do you think part of that could potentially be why JSN was so underwhelming as a rookie and why he wasn't getting on the football field?
Yes, I do think that's why, because of course he tried to point the finger at the OC this past offseason during the combine, and say that.
We saw
But
that.
this came out afterwards, so now we find out that okay, it's not just the OC not scheming you correctly; it's also that you haven't been putting the work in. So I mean, I'm very shocked that about this report. To be honest,
Yeah, it was just one of those where I was like, I don't know if this is a positive report or whether it's a negative report, or maybe it's something that we're reading too much into. But I wanted to just kind of talk about this trajectory that we've seen already, just 1 year into his career with JSN. But you look at the last year as a whole, JSN spiked in as a rookie in September of 2023 as the wide receiver 11 overall in Dynasty Fantasy Football. He was the 11th wide receiver. Now, to give you an idea of where the rookies are this year at the wide receiver position, that is going to be higher than Romo Dunze was, and that is going to be 2 spots less than where Malik Nabers is at wide receiver 9. Now, over the year, his value just fell and fell and fell, and he has now gotten to a point where he was at an all-time low of like somewhere in the 30s. Now he's wide receiver 25, so we're viewing him as a top 25 option. Do you think, just based on what we've seen, what we know, what we've heard, do you think that he is going to improve from this wide receiver 25 ranking into a higher ranking? Do you think he's going to float around the same here as like a wide receiver 2 for our teams? Or do you think he's going to dip back down? Because if he goes out and puts together another stinker year, people are going to lose their mind. They're not going to want JSN anymore.
I think that he will flirt with a low end wide receiver too. See, how I view this is how I view JSN going into this season. It's not so much where he finishes as a dynasty player. It's more so where he finishes on the pecking order of his team. This is the season. This is the season where he has to surpass Tyler Lockett. No questions asked. He has to be a definitively better receiver than Tyler Lockett, and it has to be known that is his and DK Metcalf's show going forward. I don't feel like he did that last season. I don't. And this report that came out doesn't make me feel any better about, what he's doing. I mean, great. His practice habits are great, but I always thought that he was more of a high character, work hard type of guy. But now this is kind of like made me call into question a little bit. And on top of that, it's not good that that report is even coming out from the other side of it too. Why is this report coming out? Like, so, because it's in a way, you as a coach, I think this is from a coach. This is someone saying, oh, hey, yeah, he didn't work hard last season. I mean, that probably should have stayed in the locker room.
Yeah, agreed. Victoria says this year he won't be coming back in with a broken hand, which is true. He started the year hurt last year, which could have helped, or I guess hurt his chances coming in. Anthony says, concerning if you can't beat an old real estate agent, sell JSN immediately. So I want to point out 2 years of the Washington Huskies, because if you guys are not familiar, Ryan Grubb, the new offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks, he came from this Washington Huskies program. And they have actually been one of the better passing offenses in college football for the last couple of seasons. With Michael Penix, obviously, Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk. Like, there have been a lot of NFL talents that have been in this offense, and Ryan Grubb has coached all of these guys. So over the last couple seasons, we'll start in 2022, 2 years ago, Rome Odunze, he led the team. He was the number one guy. He's the ex-wide receiver, 75 receptions and 1,100 yards. Jalen McMillan, who played the slot at Washington, 79 receptions. That was 4 more than Rome Odunze, but he had 1,090 yards. So kind of putting up similar numbers to Odunze in 2022. Now, the opposite side, Jalen Polk, 41 receptions for 694 yards. Now, let's look at 2023, because in 2023, Jalen McMillan, he missed some time. He got hurt, but similar type of sentiment. Rome Odunze, ex-wide receiver, led the offense, did what he did. Jalen McMillan, in a short stint, 45 receptions for 560 yards. And then Jalen Polk, he had 69 receptions for 1,100 yards. A lot of that was with Jalen McMillan off the football field. So we've seen that Ryan Grubb, in his offenses, if we're assuming he's carrying over the same type of offense that he had there at Washington, he features that slot wide receiver, and that's what JSN projects to be in this offense. I would assume if I was going to kind of softly pencil in guys into roles based off of what we've seen at Washington, I think moving forward, Rome Odunze is the DK Metcalf role. JSN is the Jalen McMillan role, and Jalen Polk is the Tyler Lockett role. That's the way that I see this, but that gives me hope for JSN. So I'm not super out on JSN. I think wide receiver 25, I'm definitely okay buying at that price, because you talk about the guys in the tier with him, Jordan Addison and JSN. I'm a Vikings guy, but I'll swap that all day long. I'll give you my Jordan Addison if I can get some JSN. Brian Thomas Jr. or JSN. I think there's an argument you could go either way. Xavier Worthy or JSN. I think there's an argument you could go either way. Even if we went above JSN a couple spots, you got George Pickens, T. Higgins, Tank Dell. I might take JSN in one or two of those. I think I'm still the JSN guy between the two of us. I think I like him a little bit more than you do, but I definitely see a pathway here. So I don't know, man. I'm definitely not out. Do you think? I mean, I know you said that it's now or never for JSN. He has to do it this year.
I'm not out on him because I think he's going to do it this year. But yeah, I mean, I still got hope for JSN. He just needs to. Hopefully, he's working hard, man. Like I hope that report isn't necessarily true.
Yeah, Anthony says Tutu just dropped a hot take. Keep the receipts. JSN over Addison, spicy. Hey, look, man. Anthony is like my number one receipt taker. If I say something, he just lets me know. I just caught a receipt. So the good news is we do that. Save the receipts or show the receipts show. So I'm excited to see. Victorious, he says, I don't think JSN's over Addison is spicy. Addison lost Kirk and won't have 10 touchdowns again.
That's a good point.
Addison's an interesting take this offseason too, but we'll see what happens, man. So overall, the practice habits, maybe we're reading too much into it, but if there is truth to that, it might explain why last season was a little bit rough. Now, let's move on to this last one, and I had to throw a Bears blurb in here for you. So let's talk about this one. Bears head coach Matt Eberflus said that he sees DeAndre Swift as a weapon back for this offense. Seems high on Swift's ability to play on any down and distance, saying Swift was somebody they needed to operate on third down and even on first and second down, and a weapon in the deep part of the field, blah, 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 blah. Are we potentially overlooking DeAndre Swift in the Chicago Bears offense? Because I look at where he is currently being valued on keep trade cut by the community right now. DeAndre Swift is like running back 17. He's in the same breath as Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon, but those guys are much older running backs, much shorter shelf lives than a guy like DeAndre Swift, who is still 25 years old. Are we overlooking DeAndre Swift if he is going to be used this way that Matt Eberflus is talking about?
No, we're not overlooking him. He's properly ranked. He should be ranked where he is, because it's never been a question of if DeAndre Swift could be a weapon. We know he can be a weapon. The problem with DeAndre Swift is that he gets injured. And yes, DeAndre Swift does play injured at times, but you can clearly see it when he's not 100%, because that production is not consistent when he's not 100%. So I think he's ranked properly, and I don't think we're overlooking him. We're looking at him right where he needs to be.
Yeah. I mean, we saw him play a full season last year, but obviously a lot of the touchdowns did not happen because they were being vultured by a guy named Jalen Hurts.
And
We
he was
saw a
banged
lot
up.
of he was banged up and he was playing banged up, but we
Yeah.
saw a lot of times where DeAndre Swift was being tackled on the 1-yard line, and then in came Jalen Hurts and Jason Kelce, and they went for that good old tush push. But we've seen DeAndre Swift. He's given us top 10 numbers at the running back position before. In 2021, he put together a season where he wasn't even getting a ton of rushing attempts, 150 attempts for 600 yards. He had almost 500 in the air, 7 touchdowns total, 16.1 fantasy points per game, 8th overall in the NFL. I just feel like if this Bears offense is efficient, if they're using him in the receiving game, he's got to be pretty decent for your PPR leagues. And Victorious is in here. He says 17th would be his best finish in half-point PPR. Maybe in half-point PPR for sure, but I think the majority of people are probably playing in full PPR leagues. And in full PPR leagues, he had a top 8 finish in points per game. So maybe not the overall finish, but the points per game. And I think that's probably what we need to look at more often than not, because when you are looking at points per game versus the finish, obviously we want every player to be healthy for the entirety of the year. But the points per game shows you how valuable they are when they are in your lineup, which is probably more important than the overall finish. Now, that doesn't excuse the fact that he misses games, right? But I don't know, man. Trent says he thinks we know Swift is good and offense is good, but he's going to get hurt. It seems like a lot of people feel the same way as you. Swift wasn't on the field late in the season on Philly because of pass pro. So, look, man, you think he's properly ranked here at 17?
I think that owning Roschon Johnson isn't a bad idea.
Really?
Yeah, I just got that feeling.
Do you? Okay, let me ask you this, because you're the Bears guy. You guys still have Khalil Herbert on the roster. Are you worried about Khalil at all? Because I almost feel like Khalil Herbert might be the better option than Roschon.
I got a hot take coming.
Okay.
I don't think Khalil Herbert is going to be in the Bears uniform to start next season.
Ooh, okay. Where you've been hearing anything, or is that just gut feel?
I've heard people in the local media mention how he might not be there.
Are there any names that are being thrown around, potential destinations?
No, not at all. I don't think they're to that point yet. I just think that he was drafted by the previous regime. They drafted Roschon. They like Roschon both as a player and a person. They signed Swift. And I think Herbert might ask to be released. I think that's also on the table. He might want to go somewhere else and get an opportunity because he is a good back.
Yeah, I when you said that he could potentially not be there, I was like, he'd be pretty damn good if he was in the Cowboys uniform. If they threw him out there and let him take that job from Ezekiel Elliott, because I don't think Zeke has much left in the tank, but he might be pretty decent in Dallas.
I agree. I think if they were able to get him on the roster, he might be a league winner for a few people.
Fair enough. So I just want to play our game that we typically play because we're getting close to the end of time here. But I'm just going to name a couple guys above DeAndre Swift because I think maybe there's an argument that you could put him a little bit higher. But I'll name a couple names above him, and you tell me Swift or other guy.
Okay.
Trey Benson.
Swift.
Josh Jacobs.
Josh Jacobs.
Rachaad White.
Rachaad White.
Isaiah Pacheco.
Isaiah Pacheco. Yeah, I think they're very similar.
I think we're out of that tier already because then you have like James Cook, Kenneth Walker, Kyron Williams. We're not taking.
No, even though I feel like Kyron Williams is too high. I think Kyron Williams is losing his job this season.
I just did a running back cornerstones episode that I scheduled for when I'm out on vacation next week. And I know running backs and cornerstones, they shouldn't typically go in the same sentence.
No.
There's probably 3 running back cornerstones at all. And it's the guys we talked about, Gibbs, Brees, and Bijan, and then everybody else who gives a shit. But it is the top young guys. And I talked about Kyron Williams. You know, the production that he had last year is great, but there's a good young back in Blake Corum that I really like. And I wouldn't be surprised if it goes either way. Like, I think there's a chance that Kyron Williams comes out, he balls, and everybody just is like, damn, we were overreacting for no reason. But I also think that there's a chance that Blake Corum comes in, takes his lunch money, and it's all of a sudden like, damn, we got another running back 1 here in Los Angeles. I think it could go either way. So we'll see. Anthony says Blake Corum soon to be Rams RB1. So
I agree.
we'll see. And James says, ooh, that Jacobs pick hurt his soul as a Bears fan. You could see it in his face.
because I briefly had a moment to figure out if I could hate on him, but then I was like, nah, let me just go ahead and.
Fair enough. But I think you could argue you could
pass.
maybe move Swift up 1 or 2 spots. Maybe he's in the top 15, not 17 overall. But it is what it is. We'll see what happens. But of these storylines, I just want to ask you before we get out of here. Of the storylines tonight, what is the most important storyline to keep your eye on?
Of the storylines tonight, what is the most important?
We had Nabers being the next OBJ, JJ taking it slow, Adonai Mitchell being a standout in camps, Bijan being used like CMC, Gibbs being used in the slot downfield, JSN's practice habits, and DeAndre Swift being a weapon.
I think it's definitely between the 2 running backs from last season, Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs, because I think those 2 storylines will have the most impact, even though we're talking about fantasy. Those 2 storylines will have the most impact on the regular season. I also think that they'll have the biggest impact in fantasy football as well. So I think those are the most 2 important storylines.
Yeah, I agree. I think those running back ones are interesting to me. As well, that Adonai Mitchell and that Malik Nabers, those ones are ones I'm keeping an eye on too. Because if Nabers is balling like that and he continues to keep balling like that, and Adonai's balling like that, we'll see what happens. But I did want to again thank you guys for watching this episode, and also I want to remind you guys we did surpass the 2,000. We are going to do a giveaway because of that. So if you guys want a League FFB t-shirt, I got a couple of these, 2 of them that I'm giving away to people. So you have to comment in the comment section of this video after the live stream is over. If you watch during the live stream, come back to the video, comment hashtag road to 3,000. That is what we're on the goal to now. We're trying to get to 3,000. So comment that, and I'll pick a couple of those people. I'll respond to your comment. If you're in the Discord, I'll reach out to you on the Discord. And with that being said, there is a free Discord in that description. So go down to the description, click that. We're talking fantasy football all day long. But I got 2 of them, size large, men's. If you want them, if it's going to be too big and you still want it, go ahead. You can have it. But I got 2 of them for you guys today. And like, subscribe, do all that good stuff for us. War, where can they find your content at? I know you got to get out of here because you got something that you're prepping for.
Oh, yeah. There's a wrestling event on right now, and that's what I talk about over on the Crimson Mass Show, professional wrestling. We also just hit a milestone. We just surpassed 1,000 subscribers. So I guess you could say we're on the road to 2,000. We're on the road to 2,000. And yeah, man, we're just going to keep moving forward and doing the thing. So come on, follow us, subscribe to us over on the Crimson Mass Show channel.
I was muted. My bad. I forgot. I took a sip of water. I didn't want y'all hearing me swallowing some water. So that is it. So fair enough. We will see you guys on our next episode. We have nothing else for you guys today. Like I mentioned, I am going to be out of town. I'm on vacation for the next 2 weeks. This is my last video before I go out on vacation. So the content is going to be a little bit different over the next 2 weeks from a schedule standpoint. We usually do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday releases. While I'm gone, it's going to be Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. So 6 episodes over the next 2 weeks. You get 1 less episode per week. Sorry, I couldn't get as many of those in before I left, but you're still going to get content. We'll get the Cornerstone rankings. We'll get some trade shows. We'll get some other stuff out there for you. So keep an eye out for that. But everybody enjoy yourselves. And thank you for watching. We'll see you guys on our next episode. War, until next time, my friend.
All right,
Later.
man. Catch you later.